Okay, so welcome everyone to our third TBM Exec Forum. And I think today we have two great speakers, two good friends of mine. And again, if you're just new to TBM or you've been on the TBM journey, I think the content that we're going to share with you today is going to be great. First off, we have a special gift for everyone that's part of the forum. Up until September 1st, we actually have a discount code. So if you're thinking about going to the TBM conference, feel free to use our code or not. But this is just a big thank you, and we'd like to thank the TBM Council for helping us out here. But it's a big thank you for everybody that's part of the TBM Exec Forum. So today we have Keith from Brinks and Amy from PepsiCo. Both of them have been on the TBM journey for a while. In fact, Amy she's been on the journey at multiple companies. Keith is actually going to be presenting. He's one of the speakers at the TBM conference this year. So we're actually going to get a preview of some of the content that he's going to share. All the attendees, you're automatically on mute. That's why you can't hear yourselves. But during Q&A, we will ask if you want to ask any questions. There's two ways. First way is you can raise your hand. If you do that, I will unmute you. Or you can just use the Q&A box, and we'll go ahead and read those off to the presenters during Q&A. So usually they'll speak for about 20, 25 minutes. We have reserved 5 minutes for Q&A, and then we'll switch speakers. So with that said, I'll ask Keith, go ahead if you want to share your screen, and I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Keith, and you can jump right in, my friend. And same thing with you, Amy. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you as well, too. All right. Keith, are you there?
Good. And
cool.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining. Let me just first start by sharing a little bit about Brinks, who we are. So we are the world's largest cash management company. We are celebrating 160 years of existence, and we currently have about 68,000 employees in roughly 100 countries where we operate. So that's who we are. Myself, for those of you that I haven't met, I've been with Brinks for about just over two years now, almost 2.5 years. I've got a unique set of responsibilities. So I oversee our IT finance, strategic sourcing, procurement, TBM, I would say all on the tactical side, but I've also got the transformation and innovation responsibilities for our organization, and it's really exciting, some of the work that we're doing. So this serves as a really good umbrella, and TBM is at the top of that umbrella, really helping to guide us in the right direction. So let me tell you a little bit about what I wanted to cover today.
And Keith, go ahead and feel free to, yep, there you go, my friend, thanks.
Okay. So I'm going to take you through our journey. And I want to start off by saying often people tie TBM to a tool, and it's much more than a tool. So you'll see that a little bit through this journey. But my journey started with coming on board, again, almost 2.5 years ago, and meeting with our leaders throughout the globe and even within IT, and getting the voice of the customers, both internally and externally. From there, I'm going to show kind of the IT call to action and the commitments that we made to our board. Obviously, with TBM comes transparency and if taking action, cost optimization. And then from there, how we're moving to more of a consumption-based allocation methodology. So just starting with the thought shared from the business, this is probably not uncommon for most of you that are on the phone, unless you are just light years ahead of where we are. Most people look at IT as the Department of No, the black box, the organization that just creates problems, doesn't solve problems. And we certainly were there, especially after 160 years. It was an easy target to say that everything was because IT wasn't doing their job. So we had some work to do. We also knew with the leadership team that I came in with that we wanted to separate ourselves from just being a physical guns and trucks company and starting to become a little bit more tech-enabled and differentiating ourselves through technology. So some of the commitments that I made to help improve this is really focus on everything we do tying back to our core objectives. And I've got some acronyms here, but if you were to go to any of our earnings calls, we go through these every time. So APG for us is accelerating our profitable growth. CTG, we call closing the gap, is really operational excellence and driving margin contribution. And IDS is introducing differentiated services, and that's where we have a lot of fun with innovating and creating new products that will disrupt our industry. So obviously we wanted to, in order to meet all of these, we had to put a focus on optimizing and reducing our spend. So I'll show you how we put focus on where the right areas are and what we think of as keeping the lights on. We had opportunities to rationalize our application, get rid of our technical debt as a whole. And any of the savings that we could generate, I've committed to funding a lot of our innovation and transformation through the savings that we're generating. So we're mostly self-funded in almost everything that we do. And along the way, there's risks that come into play. So we've all had concerns with compliance in the past on any of our ELAs or licensing. We've got risks around end-of-life equipment out there, and how do you manage those when you're trying to make sure that you're planning your costs properly and managing to those costs. At the end of the day, it comes down to TBM again. So it's about providing the cost transparency and committing to doing that, as well as improving on the allocation methodology. So for those of you on the call that are global in nature, it can be difficult when you're providing a shared service or where you've got a global HQ with providing a lot of solutions to various countries to manage those costs so that it feels, for all the countries, they feel like they're getting benefit. So this is what we've committed to. So before I could jump in there, I had to also respond to what our board was asking for. And a new leadership team coming on board, we had very aspirational targets set by the board, and then we went ahead and extended those a bit further. But the one thing I wanted to change is everyone was talking about IT spend as a year-over-year comparison by cost to the dollar, and I had to get the board to understand this is not a one-to-one, right? As the company grows, as revenue grows, there's a dependency on technology that will likely grow with it. But we can give business leverage by growing at less of the rate of revenue as a percentage of revenue. So everything we look at now is focused on IT costs as a percentage of revenue, and that's where we had benchmarks that we could also start to target, so that we had a fair understanding of where we should be if we wanted to be average. And of course, we strive to be better than average. So benchmarks are just a good guiding mechanism for us to see how we're performing. So I've stripped out, for the purposes of this presentation, I've stripped out the actual numbers that we have, but wanted to share with you the same visual that I come back to every quarter as we go back through with the board and every discussion that we have internally. So coming in here in the beginning of 2017, I'm looking in the past in the rearview mirror and saw that our IT costs as a percentage of revenue were higher than they should have been. We committed to the board, our board, to reduce that cost as a percentage of revenue by 30 basis points by 2019. But I also wanted to make sure that we could start looking through a different lens. So you'll see off to the side, I've got IT and BT, what we call business technologies, separated. I want to make sure that the business has the levers on the business technologies as we continue to enable the business and drive productivity as well as revenue opportunities, that we would not cut or limit growth in technology costs as a result of bad decisions being made when we could drive margin contribution and revenue forward. So we're looking at that a little differently. Where we wanted to really put a lot of focus was on IT, the back office, or the costs that we're truly keeping the lights on. And while we have a good focus on both of these areas, you'll see where the benchmarking comes in next. But in that period of time, we have actually out-delivered on that plan. So we actually hit our 30 basis point mark by the end of 2018. And we did that while acquiring a very large company as well. So we've hit our number by 2018, and I still had 2019 to show that I could even improve on that, which we did. And I've committed to an additional 10 basis points. But while doing that, we also stacked in an additional strategy, which was very much a tech-enabled strategy for new products that we're delivering. And I'm going to deliver those products at the same reduction in basis points as a percentage of revenue that I committed to the board back in the beginning of 2017. So in 2019, we'll have done that, as well as really becoming more of a technology-dependent company. So we did this with the help of TBM. To go a step further, I started looking at where we were in our peer group. And if I were to look at benchmarks, we were pretty inefficient against our logistics, transportation, and distribution partners out there. But we're also becoming more of a banking and finance company. So these are two benchmarks that I look at very closely. And you'll see that we made a lot of progress towards the logistics, transportation, distribution peer group. But as we're going towards banking and finance, we're well below. And security and compliance and regulation, if any of you on the call are in that industry, are very high. So there's a high cost of security. And we've actually increased our spend in security by over 500% in the last 2 years to become a more stable and secure company. So we've done some pretty good work here. Oops, and I left a percentage, so I'm going to move on. Okay. So I think most of you guys understand what TBM is. But to the business, this is a graphic that I use often because they're always telling us they don't understand what they're getting for it. They don't understand the details behind the big numbers that they get in the invoice. So we walk them through our taxonomy. Now, this is straight from our TBM Council, and the great work that they've done has helped guide us along the way. But this does not solve all of our problems. This just helps us with developing the right framework by which we can operationalize data within a system. There's some hard work that needs to be done up ahead, and that is around understanding the total cost and how to map those. So we probably, not unlike many of you, have our total cost is made up of localized costs as well as costs that come out of our global organization, an organization that's serving multiple countries. And when determining what your total cost of running your business is, you've got to pull all of that together. So we built out an approach to collect this data, and tool agnostic, we decided on going down a path on collecting this data by country, where we would work with them and through a series of surveys collect these 3 different buckets that you're seeing here. So the first one is really focused on our data center cost, a very large portion of our keeping the lights on cost. The second one is on the non-data center and infrastructure operations costs, everything that's supporting our organization or end user computing, security tied to end user computing, anything in that space. And both of those buckets are really shared costs that go across multiple services or multiple applications. The last one is a little bit easier to tie directly back to an application, and those are development and QA and any associated licensing to a specific application or service. So we took this approach and started conquering some of our countries with the top 15 application families and or service families. So for us, it was financials, billing, HRMS, and you can read below here what those are. But this gave us a strong focus on our largest, most critical families of services or applications where we could start capturing this data. Going a step further within each of those buckets, here's another kind of a sub-category within each of those that we focused on. And then, of course, there's more detail behind each of these. But it gave us a really a firm approach, consistent approach as we went country to country to collect this data. So going back to our taxonomy, we realized that there was more to the taxonomy that we needed for completing this exercise. So the way I'd map it back is your business capabilities in the TBM taxonomy really for us was our TCO, right? That's ultimately what we're trying to get to. Products and services, we called categories in this case. So for us, we had infrastructure as a service, our operations costs, and then those direct costs that I mentioned, the 3 buckets in the prior screen. The tiers are really our IT towers. But what we didn't have in our taxonomy was the types, the variations underneath that. And we needed to get real clarity around this. So Oracle to VxRail is a very different cost model. And we needed to break those up to get more clarity if we were building a model out that could be leveraged going forward. Below that, we had the cost pools for each of those. And then what's most important to our countries is understanding what is local versus what's global, and then what's that total cost again as you go all the way back up to the total cost of the application. So that's really who's funding those particular costs and where do those costs reside from an accounting standpoint. So once we collect this data and normalize it and do the right work, we're able to deliver something that looks like this. Now, none of you know what Simba is. It's a proprietary tool that we have internally for one of our countries, but this gives you an idea of the level of detail that we can provide back now by each of those larger categories. And this helps with people understanding and drilling further in. So we've got drillables for each of these to see invoices and data behind it to really understand the cost drivers that make up this cost. From there, we look globally to see how are we performing as an enterprise. And what was interesting is one of the big transformation efforts that we kicked off in about 2.5 years ago was consolidating our data centers. We were very antiquated. We had antiquated technologies. No one was paying attention to Moore's Law, and we just weren't managing very effectively how we were running our operations. So we started a migration to a consolidated hybrid data center model that's really provided us with the ability to scale quickly, to incubate new applications at a lower cost, to provide DR backup that we didn't have previously, all at a lower cost. And what this is showing here, and what was important to us, is to see our cost of infrastructure versus development. By looking at that, we could start to see where we need to focus and benchmark ourselves. These were all for global applications being provided or services that were touching multiple countries. But when I went into each country and looked at this, it was flipped. And you could see where there are inefficiencies and where we need to focus on further consolidations. So these are countries maybe that weren't yet inside the data center. And purely from an infrastructure view, this told a pretty big story. So it just so happens that these add up to 100%, but they aren't. They're unique in the way that we're looking at this. From the global applications, 36% of our total cost of those applications with infrastructure versus 64% on those country-based local applications. And then we looked across and started comparing how each application performed. Going a step further, we dove into specific categories of applications, or those application families that I mentioned earlier. And by the way, wherever you saw these dollar signs, I just covered over our numbers, but I don't mind sharing that our TCO is a percentage of revenue based on the unit that we selected. So we are showing that we are still fairly inconsistent. And I would say Brazil, which is usually not the most expensive, is actually performing the best as a percentage of revenue. Now, and based on the route as well, we've performed well. So we're going through and investigating each to see where there's opportunity and how we can mirror or emulate what we've done well in countries where we're performing well. So this is just a peek into the type of analysis that we're able to do to better manage our direction, the continued transformation or the cost optimization efforts. This is our plan to hit the world. So ROW is rest of world for us, and really the first 4 that we focused on represents about 65% of our total revenue base. The rest, the next series represent up to 80%, and then rest of world, which is a lot of smaller countries, is the rest. So we're prioritizing based on where our spend resides. And what we've gained agreement from as a result of the work that we're doing with our CEO and CFO is to do a showback, which we did this year, and we're focused on identifying whether we want to keep, kill, or localize. So we'll go to RFP against ourselves, localize the services that we're providing to determine where the costs will reside. But at the end of the day, we're going to do a chargeback in 2020. Now that we've got transparency and the ability to see what they're actually getting for the dollars. So for the sake of time, I've probably blown through that. I hope I didn't move too quick or speak too quickly, but that's really it. I always go back to our business and make sure that they understand this is not just purely us delivering something back, but we provide the governance, the framework, the processing, but data is going to come from each of the owners of the data or each of the owners of their processes or services. and that this is something that we need to be very collaborative with. And we've had a lot of luck in doing that so far. So with that said, Tim, I'll open up for questions if there are any.
Yeah, we actually have a couple. And again, feel free to type in your question with the Q&A box or raise your hand, and I'll go ahead and unmute you. So the first one, Keith, and we hear this a lot. What was the biggest barrier for Brinks to adopt TBM?
I would say, so I was very fortunate. I came into this organization from with my leadership team where we're implementing TBM in our prior organization. So I had a little practice with them in advance, and that always helped. But we didn't nail it. We didn't get it. We weren't as far along as we are now. Tim, I hear some background noise. I don't know if everyone else can. With that said, the biggest barrier for us internally was not the top down. So I had our CEO and CFO from day one within this organization saying, let's do it. The challenge was educating and competing against other priorities with the rest of the business and our IT leaders, because we are moving very dynamically right now. We are accomplishing an awful lot in a very short period of time. So prioritization was probably the biggest barrier, and we overcome that with any business case that comes forth. Most of the time, there's some kind of a tie back to TBM that we're able to leverage. The second barrier, and I think this is true of anyone that tries to go down this journey, is data, data quality, data readiness. It is a big challenge, and it continues to be a challenge for us. So it's caused us to go down because we aren't able to operationalize everything until we have data. We are doing some of this in a manual fashion. It's certainly not the preferred choice, but we can't wait on perfection. So, if there's any guidance I could ever offer anyone, is perfection is going to kill you. You've got to start somewhere. You've got to move quickly, and then you've got to hold your constituents, your customers, accountable for validating data. Because you can only validate it to a certain extent. But what happens is most of the time that you spend is on those reviews and on the deeper dives and on the challenging of the makeup of that data.
Awesome, perfect.
I don't know if that answered the question.
Nope, that was great.
Okay.
All right, we have a question from Wes, and I'm going to go ahead and unmute Wes. Go ahead, Wes.
Hey, how's it going, Keith? And thanks, Tim. So thanks first and foremost for sharing your journey. It's pretty awesome. But I was also curious as to, along the journey, when you're going across country to tackle your TBM goals, what approaches do you take to normalize the definition of an application across that enterprise? It seems that would have been a challenging thing to do across countries.
Actually, Wes, that's a great question, and good to hear your voice, by the way. Thanks for the question. So we have, at the end of the day, we have a very simple business, and while it's becoming a little more complex with some of the things we're adding to it, I would say the two primary businesses that we do are what we call cash in transit, or the transportation business, and that's the secure logistics side of it. The second is around money processing. And there's a lot in between. So the ambiguity is in where do those plugins or those subcomponents of any of these that kind of overlap fit. And we had to make some decisions with sometimes on the fly and sometimes through repetitive conversations to try to draw the importance of landing in a certain place with each of those. But because we started with very straightforward differentiators in the services that we deliver, and we have applications that support those services, we're able then to take all those subcomponents of it and find a place for it. And not all countries are 100% agree on what they are, but what they can agree on is the visibility that they now have into each of those. So as you drill into services, you have your sub-services, and you can drill down from there to see exactly what they need to for their purposes. for us, we have a very consistent way now to represent country to country the makeup of those bigger services, the overarching services that we speak to at at a board level or even to the shareholders. But it's Wes, it's not and I know you know this as well. This is not an easy process. So it takes a lot of communication. There's a bit of marketing and campaigning that goes with it. And usually it's about the WIFM. So you've got to come back and show why it's helping them when they've got targets to hit the CTG objective I shared earlier, which is operational excellence or margin contribution. Everyone's incentivized equally on all three of those objectives. So they want to make sure that they see opportunity, and we're helping giving them the visibility to identify those opportunities.
Perfect. Thanks, Wes. We'll do two more questions. This one states, when you started doing chargeback, did they question the numbers? And do you have reports in place? Yeah. And do you have reports in place that allow them to drill into the detail, more like a bill of IT?
Yeah, so one, yes, the questions and challenges will never cease. This is never going to be a perfect science, and not everyone's going to agree to everything, right? So we have plenty of business leaders that want everything for free, and they know they can go to Best Buy and buy a laptop for less than we buy laptops for. But what they don't understand is that everything that makes up the cost of a end-user computing device within an enterprise that's got highly regulated customers. So part of our story in TBM is giving them the data to show exactly what it is that makes up that cost, and to help suppress some of those concerns and challenges. And it's usually about what have you done for me lately. So it's not always memory is dependent on the source. But we're making progress. I would just say that the challenges will never cease, no matter how good you are at this. On I answered part of your question, Tim, and I'm so sorry. What was the other part of the question?
About reports. Do you provide the business reports?
Yes. Thank you. So we do. We do provide the reports. This is still early days, and I've got to say we're not doing a chargeback in 2019. It's 2020, so it's really a show back this year. But right now we're starting our budgeting process for 2020, and it's picking up steam where they want weekly updates to these reports that we are providing, and they're working towards developing their plan for 2020. As now it's going to become an above-the-line activity for them, whereas we're just doing the show back this year. So everyone will get hit with the actual consumption.
Perfect.
Yes, we're doing reports.
All right, that show back, shame back view is great. All right, I'll do one more. And this, I get asked this a lot. Do you allocate people to services, or is it more or less you base off of projects and timesheets? So
we allocate for everything keeping the lights on. Any kind of support is allocated to the service. We are allocating project-related work via timesheets to a project. So the projects don't always fall under a service until they become operationalized or until they go to production. So we do treat those separately. Good question.
Awesome. Well, Keith, thank you so much. And again, if you guys want to contact Keith, feel free to reach out to him in the TBM forum, or you can reach out to him via email, and I can provide that to you. So, Keith, thank you so much. We will now move over to Amy from PepsiCo. Amy, say hi, so I know that you're off mute.
Hello.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, the floor is all yours, my friend.
Good. So just following, first and foremost, hello to everyone. Usually I love to be on video, but in lieu of video, there's a picture of me. Really love that I was given the opportunity to come and chat with fellow practitioners. I thought first and foremost I'd share a little bit about me, and then I want to dovetail on some of the things Keith said around communication, championing, what's the value, whatnot. So I thought I'd kind of take it from there. But just a little bit of background about me, and I think this is why it's made me so successful in TBM is that I started at a company that was a business process outsourcer. So when you were calling like HP or Microsoft for call center support, you were effectively calling a company called Stream Global Services. And I started out really in AP, accounting, whatnot, and was given an opportunity to, in my career path there, to become a financial analyst supporting a CIO, and he was fantastic. He told me right up front, I have no clue what depreciation is, and I was like, Bob, that's fantastic. I have no clue what a server is. So he really helped set the groundwork for me to learn about IT, and then I brought to him the finance angle. So we married up very nicely to help talk about the cost of IT. That led me into a role at AmerisourceBergen, a pharmaceutical distributor. Wonderful IT organization there, and back in 2011 they embarked into a TBM journey, and so around 2012 I went ahead and took that role, helping to establish a bill of IT, cost transparency of application TCOs, application rationalization, all in the goal of helping to really unlock how IT was costing, because the challenge there that they suffered was that IT was a big black hole of cost. And I'm not joking, that was literally what was said multitude of times. And the thought process there was to be viewed as a strategic partner. And so had a wonderful journey there. And then now I have an even better journey here at PepsiCo, and have been here since 2016, helping to support our TBM efforts and our TBM journey. So I share just the background with you because I have found through my best practices that TBM has become a real niche in that, one, having the understanding of finance and what's a P&L, what's a balance sheet, amortization, all those fantastic words, to understanding what a server is. You know, what's a CPU on a server? Why is that relevant? To why is there different tiers of storage? Just having those fundamentals come together makes someone very successful in understanding TBM and bringing those two together. So with that, I'd like to share, just being that I am at PepsiCo today, the journey that PepsiCo has been on. It started December of 2016 when I joined the organization. At the time, Pepsi did have recently had Jody Davids, the CIO, come on board. With her background and her knowledge base she had in her previous role at TBM office, and saw what it could unlock for her as a leader. And that was one of her asks here at Pepsi was, I need that similar views. I need to be able to run my IT organization that's viewed as that partner to the business, and I'm providing them that transparency. And so as we look through the years, I thought I'd share with you just what we have implemented here, be it a process or insights or whatnot, and what are the outcomes that we've seen. So stepping back to 2017, Pepsi as an IT shop is a global-based organization. And as Keith mentioned, data was not our friend. It still is not our friend. And so we continue, we realized back in 2017, how do we chunk this apart so that it doesn't feel overwhelming? It doesn't feel that it takes forever to put something out to show a success right away. So for 2017, we really focused on what we thought of was our program. So what are those staff members? What are the roles we need? What are those skills we need? What's the tool we want? So we worked on that, and then it dovetailed into jumping right in, and we went with North America. So as we ascertained after we set up the program, we were like, what do we want to what part of the onion do we want to peel first? And we looked at North America. We felt, knowing the health of the data, knowing how, we sit in Plano, Texas, so we were very close with IT finance here, along with our IT service management organization. We felt just digging into North America was our best solution. And we really focused on, when you think of the TBM taxonomy, cost pools through services. We had no desire or appetite to figure out how to go up to the business units yet. So we stopped at the services layer. The fantastic part about that was we were successful in North America to look at IT towers. What was the cost per server in North America? What's the cost per gigabyte of storage? We were able to start to look at a cost per device. And then as well, we started to dig apart and determine the TCO of applications and be able to start helping to support a possible application rationalization effort. Our goal in 2017 was to have a 40% North America data quality. What does that mean? That meant that we were looking at the data. We had something that we call KQIs by our data leadership team, KQIs, key quality indicators, and these were algorithms or metrics that had been set up to show us, hey, we have servers that aren't mapped to an app. We have storage not mapped to an app. We have software contracts that aren't mapped to an app. So we started to work and peel that onion around the data quality side. In 2018, and I should have mentioned when I throw years out here, these are calendar years. In 2018, we decided to take the next step of our journey, which was around international cost transparency. So what does that mean to us here at Pepsi? We looked at all the countries outside of North America. So we wanted to entail what we did in North America, but expand it to international. As well, we implemented vendor insights. That's a module with the platform we use. We wanted to help provide some insights into our managed service providers. We felt that was a great opportunity for us to start to manage their cost and their service levels a bit different than what we had done in the past. And so we unlocked that. And then we started to figure out, okay, we've done North America cost transparency. That's fantastic. What are those insights at the tower layer, the app layer, the service layer? And so we actually identified about $11 million in insights that we brought to IT leadership to say, if we action these, we could get something from them. And so as part of that, in 2018, we realized the outcome in 2017, we started to get into this fluidity of North America, but then just layering on international. And then that takes us to 2019 around international, getting after those insights like what we did in North America. But now we're starting to look at what we call IT consumption or service costing. So really unlocking that bill of IT and starting to expose what would that look like if we were to bill to our sectors. And this has been a journey this year that's been really rough, but very rewarding in many ways. Just in that, similar to Keith's story, is that, what are they going to take away from that bill? Are we going to get, a lot of pushback, or that's not right, or whatnot? And so we're 6 months into that journey today, and so we're still working on that for the balance of the year. So with that shares just the journey we've been on the last 3 years. But I actually wanted to pivot the conversation a little bit and talk about TBM coming from the comments from Keith around change management efforts. And I mention this because I really feel like this is an area that is underplayed with TBM, very much so today when I talk to other practitioners or colleagues. And it's something that I know personally I've gotten very passionate about. And so here in front of you, I'm just going to talk about just some of the things that we've done here to implement and make TBM, like become the TBM cheerleader, if you will. I think of it as a constantly evolving circle. We're always ascertaining what's the current state, what's going on, what is that change we need to impact end state and measure. It might seem so rudimentary to say this out loud, but one of the things coming into Amerisource as well as PepsiCo is this effort of instilling that TBM is a foundation to make you do your job more successfully. And so what today we do is we're constantly looking, okay, you do X today, what will that change look like? Here's the end state, and then we measure that. Now, that might seem, again, rudimentary, but I wanted to give you some examples of what we've done here at Pepsi to make TBM sticky, if I like to say. And so that people see the value right away. I know one of the things I struggle with is pushing versus pulling. Like, I know at times when I work with our stakeholders, if I feel like I'm pulling, I always come back to this framework to say I need to fix something here because I want them to be pushing me. Like, I want this, I want that, I want this, I know you have that. It's much easier for our organization, our TBM organization, if there's a want and a need there than versus just constantly trying to get people to the table. So as part of that, I thought I'd just share some best practices and something that others may want to think about or even share other examples. But when we go through this framework, we look at our current state. One of the things I press upon is stakeholder interviews. I find that if I say, hey, a BRM, what are you guys doing today? What's your biggest impact of not being able to show cost to your sector? How does your business unit view IT? How does your business unit view you as a BRM? So it's having these kind of we have roughly about 50 questions we have per persona we ask each time we go through this effort. And it's really getting to peel that onion as just understanding what are the problem statements or where are areas we need to focus. And we find that actually very different when we look at our different regions, meaning what might happen in Latin America versus what might happen in North America. And the biggest thing that, one of the learnings that I share with fellow practitioners is just understanding your current processes. And that's something that, you definitely can't take for granted. So for example, a bill of IT. Okay, great. I want to implement a bill of IT. That's fantastic. Well, what do you guys do today? How do you show them their numbers today? And so just taking that time and drawing that out and not going through that so fast, because that becomes your base or your basis to say, look at, this is how you used to do it. I'm going to show you how it's going to get done and look at all the benefits you get from it. It almost becomes this selling pitch, or it sells itself. Now, after we always look at a current state, one of the things we work on is a change impact. And so we like to show, okay, great, we understand how you're doing today. We heard you talk about your problem statements. Here's what we are going to show you as value. And we love to put gamification around it. So let me give an example. For the bill of IT, I was chatting with the BRM, and he was sharing with me it takes him a couple weeks to pull together some information to show his partners. And I was like, wow, that's pretty intense, a couple weeks, and you have to get it from various data sources, et cetera. And I said, well, here, why don't I actually take you into what this bill of IT will look like for you in your end state goal. And then as I was slicing and dicing, I was going back to my interview with him and understanding what his problem statements were. And I was like, do you remember you said, hey, you can't break it down to that actual department head? Well, here, we have that for you. And so that helped to solidify and change that conversation from a pull to a push. And we love to throw gamification on this. So one of the things we like to do in that space is throw out, hey, for the first 10 people that can share this with their business partner and get some feedback, we have a $10 X gift card for you, or we have some really cool swag, Pepsi swag. And so we found that for that change impact, if we show them the value and we put a little bit of fun into it, it's exemplified the adoption that much more. The end state, we are very process driven in that, we want to share what are our processes, are we measuring them, managing them. But from a TBM perspective, one of the things you can't negate is when you think about instilling processes. So for example, for the bill of IT, okay, great, we're going to generate a bill of IT, but I need you to review it every period. I need you to review it not just every period, as BRMs, but with your business, right? And so by X date, I need you to do that every month or every period or every so often. And so one of the biggest things is just continually sharing, hey, there is a process associated with this. I'm not just deploying a bill and now you need to go own it, but we've developed that process for you. And we love to share it detailed and simplified. And it goes back to the value piece. And last but not least is measuring. So we love to see if, what we've embarked upon is adding value. And we do things such as frequent communications on Yammer. We leverage Yammer here within our IT organization, and we do like tips and tricks, hashtag tips and tricks. And so we'll do a 2-minute tech bite video that says, hey, did you know? And they'll go into Aptio and they'll do like a little 2-minute video of showing some cool things that you can get as end users. We did you know data? Did you know that data comes from, our actuals come from SAP? We get those. So we're constantly doing these frequent communications to make our TBM users aware and keep them educated. As well, we do gamification. We continue with that method. We actually had a recent gamification. We do one every quarter. We're actually ending one and at 4:30 today. We're going to talk about who the winners are. But in Q2, our gamification was who can unlock the most in insights coming from our PPM data, so our time tracking data. And the second one was around how much time is being booked in our PPM tool. It's called HP PPM. That's why I'm being repetitive with it. But how much of that were they able to adjust or change behaviors by people booking time because they were not booking time to begin with correctly? So we've got people who are really excited to go fix data because we've thrown a $25 gift card at it. And so we measure that every quarter. In Q1, we did one around insights in the application space. So who could come up with the most creative insight, and can we possibly go action it? So we leverage these to elevate them up to leadership. And then in Q1 as well, we had some issues with servers not being mapped to applications. So the application portfolio that got the portfolio owners that got their teams to get that fixed within our CMDB got a $25 gift card each. So they were loving on that. And then we have a TBM website. That's our main communication channel point. And so we're constantly linking back our trainings. We do a success story every 2 weeks, and we ghostwrite it, and our TBM users actually email it out or send it out. And that's been a really big, awesome campaign that we've done in the last 6 months. And so on our TBM website, we constantly share those success stories. We talk about the team, what are our processes, links to training, so they can go take their training and then an exam to see if they passed. And so we leverage that as a communication resource as well. So with that, I'd like to stop and take a breath and see if there's any questions or any thoughts that the folks on the phone want to share.
Yeah, absolutely there are, Amy, and thank you so much. Wes, we did it before. We'll do it again. I'll go ahead and unmute you, and you can ask the question.
Hey, Amy, this is so cool. I get to speak to you and Keith today. It's like being at conference virtually. But I was curious, right, around your TBM journey. And I remember when we spoke a couple years back, we were discussing how you would grow the TBMO. And I was curious as to how do you finally solve that problem between building talent versus buying talent? And what does your steady state look like today?
Yeah, so, what's interesting about TBM, and again, I'm a finance person by trade, so I come back to finance. There's an element of, and speaking of Wes, you're on my screen now, there's an element that TBM, you have to be financially savvy and you need to be IT savvy. And then I think you need to layer on one more element, which is you are analytical. like you can dig into numbers and be like, there's the story, there's the so what, and if I can go back. So, Wes, here at Pepsi, it's been a little homegrown, and some of it has been recruiting external folks that have been in the TBM space before. And I think that the thing is one of the things we do is like, for example, I have a couple team members, they meet every other week, and one is a TBM practitioner for many years, and one is new to TBM in the last 6 months in our TBM office. So he's trying to share all these great things you can unlock, and here's her drinking from the fire hose of just getting to learn the platform, build relationships, start to become more analytical, whatnot. So, Wes, my answer is it's, when you look at skill sets, it's a little bit of finding folks internal and external. Now, having said that, we have a model here at Pepsi where our team works data and integration to platform to value and insights. That's kind of the workflow internally within TBM. So we have a data team that works on ingesting data, looking at data health, providing that back to the process owners. We've got a platform team managing the reporting and the onboarding onto the platform. And we have a value and insights team that works on being the partners to folks who consume our TBM processes. We're starting to cross-train a little bit here and there to get folks a little bit more broader exposure so you don't become so siloed. But that's our sustain activities, is that data and platform and value and insights.
Outstanding. Great. Thanks, Wes. I'll ask you the same question I asked Keith. Amy, what was the biggest barrier in regards to getting people to adopt TBM?
I'm going to use my Amerisource days as well as my Pepsi days. The biggest thing is I'm already doing, so much, and you want to layer this on. It's getting people to think differently, and it's especially IT people, which I find kind of ironic because in my head, I think of IT people as visionary, building cool new things. It's really stopping and saying, hey, it doesn't matter if the CIO is asking you to do this or leadership or whatnot. You're an application owner. Don't you care about how much your total application costs? And is that the right thing for the business? I mean, it comes back to just constantly showing that value, and that goes back to my framework I mentioned. I'm constantly doing a reminder of that. I'm constantly showing the value and reminding them of that. It's not a checkbox and you're done. And so adoption is something that you just can't say, check the box, I've done it, I've rolled it out. It's constantly sharpening that saw.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we have a question from an attendee. So for cost savings, what was like the lowest hanging fruit? What was like one of the areas that you were able to drill down into and say, yep, I think there's some savings right there? Was it at the cost pool layer, IT towers, or services? Like, what was the first thing that you tackled?
We started, there's a few, but one that just was so rudimentary was servers. Servers mapped to an application. So if the servers aren't mapped, then what are we doing paying for them? What can we repurpose them? Why are they just sitting in the data center? That was one that unlocked some savings right away. Another one that unlocked savings that we found, but we haven't unlocked it, was number of laptops or workstations that are sitting dormant for the last 90 days. But we're paying for. Just something rudimentary like that if we had a very solid process in place of deploying and then getting them back as associates leave, it could save us a nice chunk of change.
Okay. Did you adopt service roles, or did you just use existing IT roles across the organization? I.e., you mentioned you had a BRM. Do you have like a service owner that kind of acts as a general manager?
No, today at PepsiCo we don't. So we have a couple stakeholders when we talk of applications or services, and I mentioned that applications purposefully because we have a invest side and then a run side, and so we look at that for applications that way. Now, as far as service owners. We don't have that instilled today at PepsiCo, so I can't provide any insights there. I will say at my time at Amerisource, hands down, they had service owners. They owned their service, their offerings, their costs, their SLAs, input into the catalog, roadmap, improvement, talking about ways, helping the BRMs identify insights or ways to reduce costs for a business unit. So in my past experience, I've had exposure in that space because of that, because of Amerisource.
All right, awesome. Well, you took us to 3:00. So, Amy, thank you so much. Keith, thank you so much. Our next forum will be in September. And then we do plan on doing a get-together at the TBM conference for anyone that's going to attend this November. And again, feel free to use our discount here. And again, thanks again for your participation. And we will post this along with materials on the LinkedIn group. And again, have a great day, and we will talk to everybody in 2 months. Take care. Bye.